1475, January 10th, a frozen valley in Moldavia. An Ottoman army over 100,000 strong marches toward what they think is an easy victory. They have conquered Constantinople. They have crushed the Balkans. They believe nothing can stop them. They are about to learn otherwise. In a marshy depression near Vaslui, outnumbered 3-1, a prince named Stephen waits. He has chosen this ground carefully. The Ottomans will cross here. They must cross here. And when they do, he will show them why even the conqueror of Byzantium should fear a cornered wolf. When scorched earth and tactical genius combine to create one of the worst defeats the Ottomans ever suffered. This is not legend. This is documented in Venetian records, Polish chronicles, and Ottoman sources that tried to bury the shame. This is the Battle of Vaslui. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Battle of Vaslui entry in Wikipedia, last updated December 5th, 2025, contemporary Polish chronicler John Długosz's accounts from 1475, Venetian diplomatic correspondence archived in the State Archives of Venice, and historian Alexander Mikaberidze's analysis published in The Conflict and Conquest in the Islamic World Encyclopedia. These aren't surface-level sources. These are the primary documents and scholarly assessments that reconstruct what actually happened when winter, terrain, and desperation collided. Now back to the information. Control these, you control the trade routes from Kaffa through Suceava to Lwów in Poland. Control these, you open Moldavia like a door, and through Moldavia you reach Hungary and Poland in 15 to 20 days' march. Stephen knows this, Mehmed knows this, the region called Bessarabia becomes the flashpoint. His father is attending a wedding of one of his boyars. A celebration, trust everywhere, until it is not. Stephen's uncle, Peter Aaron, leads a stealthy raid. The surprise is complete. Bogdan II is captured, beheaded on the spot. Stephen barely escapes with his life. He is 16 years old. His world collapses in a single night. But Hunyadi cannot help him reclaim the throne. Not yet. Then Stephen moves to Wallachia. His cousin there is Vlad III. You know him as Dracula. Spring 1457. With Vlad's backing, 6,000 horsemen, Stephen storms back into Moldavia. Men from the lower country, southern Moldavia, join him. They remember his father. They hate Peter Aaron. But Aaron escapes. A second battle follows at Orbic, another defeat for Aaron. He flees to Poland. Stephen is won. Metropolitan Teoctist I anoints him prince. Stephen is 22 years old. He will rule Moldavia for 47 years and fight 48 major battles. He will win 46 of them. 25 years of pretenders fighting for the throne. The economy is shattered. The boyars are divided. Some supported Aaron, some supported other claimants. Loyalty is a luxury Stephen cannot afford without force. Executes 20 prominent boyars. 20 men who plotted against him, who conspired with Hungary, who thought a foreign king could win. He also impales 40 lesser landowners suspected of disloyalty. The message is clear. Treason ends in blood. Marile Vornik Isaiah, Cup-bearer Negrila, Chancellor Alexa, men with ties to external powers. Men who undermine central authority. Their estates are confiscated, redistributed to lesser boyars and the church in exchange for military service. Stephen builds a patronage network, one that depends on him, not on independent feudal domains. When Stephen takes the throne, Moldavia has 3 walled fortresses: Suceava, Nemts, and Hoten. 1 earth and wood fortress at Roman. Not enough, not nearly enough. He embarks on a fortress-building program that will define his reign. Old Orhai, erected around 1470 on the Dniester River to watch the crossings. Soroka, built in 1499, also on the Dniester, to strengthen the defense system along that critical frontier. Chilia, rebuilt in 1479 after he finally captures it permanently. Roman, upgraded from wood to stone in 1483. Crăciuna, conquered in 1482. Each fortress placed strategically, at river fords, on trade routes, defending the capital, watching the borders. Thicker walls, better positions. The fortress becomes nearly impregnable. In 1476, when Mehmed himself besieges Suceava after Valea Alba, the fortress holds. The Ottomans cannot take it. They also fail at Niepce citadel. The fortresses Stephen built save Moldavia when field armies cannot. Stephen creates something different, a standing army of 10 to 12,000 men. The Curtini, lesser landowners obligated to provide cavalry service in exchange for land grants. Not mercenaries, not hired swords, men with a stake in Moldavia's survival. Heavy cavalry, the Viteji, elite warriors with lances and chainmail. Light cavalry, the Kalarash, mobile scouts and skirmishers. Professional infantry with pikes, axes, and composite bows. Then there is the Ostiamare, the Great Army. Every able-bodied free male over 14 conscripted in times of crisis. 30,000 peasants armed with maces, bows, homemade weapons. Not professional, but numerous. and motivated. They are defending their homes, their fields, their families. Stephen trains them in skirmish tactics, hit and run, ambushes, harassment. They cannot stand in open battle against Janissaries. But in forests and marshes and winter cold, they bleed invaders dry. Stephen invades Wallachia and burns Bryla. The Ottomans retaliate. They cross the Dniester, they pillage Moldavian towns, the pressure builds. But the Ottomans restore Radu the Fair with fresh troops. Back and forth, blood and thrones. Wallachia becomes a battleground. Come to Constantinople with your delayed homage, kneel. He issues orders. Hatem Suleiman Pasha, Beylerbey of Rumelia, and the siege of Shkodër in Albania. Assemble your troops in Sofia, march to Moldavia, crush Stephen, then advance to Poland, winter there. In spring, link with my main army and invade Hungary. This is not a punitive raid. This is the opening move of a northern campaign. Now they must march across the Balkans. From Albania through Bulgaria to Moldavia, a month's journey, winter weather, difficult terrain. The troops are already exhausted. They assemble in Sofia. Then they turn north. Reality sits somewhere between. The corps consists of Janissaries, elite infantry armed with handguns and composite bows, heavy cavalry called Sipahis, light cavalry scouts the Akinci ride ahead, field artillery rolls behind, and there are vassals. 17,000 Wallachians under Basarab Lyota, Stephen's former ally turned enemy, Crimean Tatar auxiliaries, Timariot troops from conquered territories. Whatever the precise count, the invasion force dwarfs anything Stephen can field. 30,000 farmers and townsmen pulled into the Oste Mare, the great army, every able-bodied free male over 14, armed with maces, bows, homemade weapons. They are not professional soldiers. They are desperate defenders. Stephen recruits 5,000 Sakali mercenaries from Transylvania. These are not the reinforcements he hoped for. He wrote to Poland, Hungary, Rome, begging for support. He got almost nothing. Europe watches. Europe does not act. Ottoman scouts report back to Suleiman. Empty land, no food, no water, no shelter. The wells they find are poisoned with animal carcasses and lime. The army must keep moving. They cannot stop. They cannot resupply. The temperature drops. Men freeze. Horses die. Disease spreads through the ranks. The Ottomans suffer steady losses. Not enough to stop them. Enough to bleed them. Enough to exhaust them further. Morale sinks. The winter march becomes a slog. To reach Vaslui, the Ottomans must cross Podul Inalt, the high bridge, over the Barlad River, a wooden bridge, unsuitable for heavy transportation of large forces. The area beyond is a semi-oval valley, marshy ground, hills covered with forests on three sides. The terrain restricts cavalry movement. The trees block formations. It is a killing ground. His father, Bogdan II, defeated the Poles here in 1450. Stephen himself fought here at age 17, side by side with Vlad the Impaler. He has chosen the battlefield the way a hunter chooses a trap. Their scouts move forward blindly. Their formations compress in the narrow space. The heavy cavalry that should screen the flanks cannot deploy effectively. The ground is frozen on top, but marshy beneath. Horses stumble. Footing is treacherous. Behind them, his 20 cannon wait. His infantry kneel with pikes and bows. His cavalry hold the flanks in the tree line. The fog conceals them completely. Before the main engagement, he has positioned buglers behind the Ottoman lines, hidden in the forests and hills surrounding the valley. When the Ottomans commit to the valley floor, the buglers suddenly sound their horns, loud, echoing, coming from all directions. The sound reverberates through the fog. The Ottomans panic. They think they are surrounded. They think fresh armies are closing in from all sides. Chaos spreads through their ranks. At that moment, Stephen's artillery opens fire. 20 cannon roar from behind the wagon fort. Grapeshot and stone balls tear through the packed Ottoman formations. The range is point blank. The Ottomans cannot see where the fire is coming from. They stumble forward into the killing zone. The Moldavian infantry loose volleys of arrows. Then the Viteji, the heavy cavalry, charge from the flanks. The Janissaries advance. They are the elite. They have taken Constantinople. They have broken armies across Europe. But here, they are fighting blind in marsh and fog. Their firearms are less effective in the damp cold. Their formations cannot hold on the uneven ground. The Moldavian infantry engage with pikes and axes. Close quarter slaughter. The ground turns to mud and blood. But the wagon fort holds. The artillery keeps firing. The Moldavian cavalry strike and withdraw, strike and withdraw. The Wallachian auxiliaries, seeing the disaster, begin to waver. Some flee. Others fight half-heartedly. The Crimean Tatars pull back. The Ottoman center collapses. Thousands more wounded. The survivors break and run. Suleiman Pasha orders a retreat. But retreat through the marshy valley is chaos. Men throw away weapons and armor to flee faster. They abandon the wounded. The Moldavian forces pursue. For 3 days, the pursuit continues. Small bands of Ottoman soldiers are hunted down and killed. The wounded are executed or left to freeze. Venetian records state casualties beyond 40,000 on the Ottoman side. Polish chronicler Jan Długosz confirms similar losses. Ottoman sources are silent or vague, a telltale sign of catastrophic defeat. Some historians argue the true losses were lower, perhaps 20 to 30,000, accounting for exaggeration in the fog of war. But even conservative estimates make this one of the worst Ottoman defeats of the 15th century. 4,000 Ottomans are captured. Stephen executes many of them. He sends 4 captured Ottoman commanders, 36 battle standards, and spoils to King Casimir of Poland and Lithuania. He sends prisoners and standards to Pope Sixtus IV and King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. He is not just celebrating, he is proving he is demanding support. Mara Brankovic, the former wife of Sultan Murad II and stepmother to Mehmed, tells a Venetian envoy that the defeat is the worst the Ottomans have ever suffered. The statement is recorded in Venetian diplomatic correspondence. It carries weight. Mara lives in the Ottoman court. She knows the internal reaction. The shock is genuine. He sits in silence. His other plans of expansion halt. He focuses entirely on revenge. The man who broke Byzantium has been humiliated by a small principality on his northern frontier. It is unacceptable. It is intolerable. He pleads for a coordinated crusade against the Ottomans. He argues that Mehmed's best troops are now lost. The time to strike is now. He sends envoys with the letters. He sends proof, prisoners, standards, captured weapons. He sends no additional troops to Stephen. It is recognition. It is not money. It is not soldiers. And Europe leaves him to face what comes next. Contemporary Western sources estimate the force at 90,000 to 150,000 soldiers. Historians Dennis Dilettante and Keith Hitchens regard these numbers as plausible. Historian Carmen Gabor argues they are exaggerated, noting that the first confirmed 100,000-strong Ottoman army does not appear until the reign of Selim II decades later. Ottoman military records from the time suggest the army numbered closer to 30,000 core troops, supplemented heavily by auxiliaries. Whatever the true number, it is larger than the previous invasion. He routs them, kills most of them. The Polish Chronicle records that fleeing Tatars discard weapons, saddles, and clothes. Some, as though crazed, jump into the river Dnieper. Mengele writes to Mehmed afterward. He has lost his son and 2 brothers. He has returned with only 1 horse. He will wage no more war against Stephen. But this time, the Ottoman army is too large, too well supplied, too determined. Mehmed advances steadily. The main battle at Valea Alba, also called Rozbojeni, also called Akdere, White Valley in Turkish. An artillery duel opens the engagement. Then the Moldavians lure the Ottoman forces into a forest and set it on fire. Casualties on both sides mount. The defending Moldavians repel several attacks with steady fire from handguns. The Ottoman janissaries are forced to crouch on their stomachs instead of charging. The forest becomes a meat grinder. Seeing his forces falter, Mehmed personally charges with his guard. He rallies the janissaries. He turns the tide. The Ottoman infantry penetrate the forest. Man-to-man fighting. The Moldavian army is overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Stephen retreats through the forest. He saves most of his troops but abandons the fortified camp. The Moldavian chronicler Grigore Ureche writes that the entire battlefield is covered with the bones of the dead. Polish chronicler Jan Długosz estimates Moldavian losses at more than 200 dead. Italian chronicler Giovanni Maria Angelello states about 200 killed and about 800 captured. Light losses for a retreat under pressure. Stephen regroups in the northwestern part of Moldavia, or across the border in Poland. He begins raising another army. Plague spreads through the ranks. Stephen's forces constantly harass the supply lines, cut off foraging parties, ambush stragglers. The Ottomans besiege several fortresses, but fail to take significant strongholds. The siege of Nimes. Citadel ends in failure. The fortress holds. And while Mehmed is deep in Moldavia, Vlad the Impaler raises a new army in Wallachia. The Ottomans face potential encirclement. In late summer, Mehmed orders a withdrawal. The invasion achieves nothing permanent. Stephen returns to Moldavia, leaving Moldavian troops to support Vlad. But the Ottomans invade again to restore Bessarab. Vlad and his Moldavian retainers are massacred before January 10th, 1477, exactly 2 years after Vaslui. Stephen invades Wallachia yet again. He replaces Bessarab Laiota with Bessarab IV the Younger. The cycle continues. Under Sultan Bayezid II, Mehmed's son, they conquer Chilia and Ackerman. They incorporate this region into the empire under the name Budjak. Moldavia loses its access to the Black Sea. It becomes landlocked. It will remain so for centuries. Victory at Vaslui. The construction takes 3 months and 3 weeks. An inscription above the entrance records the details. I, Voivode Stephen, by the grace of God, ruler of Moldavia, son of Bogdan, have started to have the monastery of Voronezh built to the glory of the holy and well-known St. George, the great and victorious martyr, in 6,996 in May on 26, on one day of Monday after the Pentecost in I. Had it finished the same year, in September 1488. Mixed with organic binders, possibly egg, animal glue, or plant extracts, applied using techniques that remain mysterious, the frescoes survive 500 years of weather, rain, snow, sun, pollution. Modern spectroscopic analysis identifies the components, but cannot fully replicate the durability or the exact shade. The secret dies with the artisans. Apostles surround him. Below, the resurrection of the dead unfolds, the weighing of souls, rivers of fire, paradise and hell in intricate detail. Turks are depicted among the condemned peoples. Angels blow buckums, Moldavian horns. The figures wear Moldavian peasant dress. Adam drives a cart with bulls. Eve spins wool. This is not generic Byzantine art. This is Moldavian identity painted in defiance of an empire that sought to erase it. Stephen dies July 2nd, 1504. 47 years as prince, 48 major battles, 46 victories. He is 69 years old. The Romanian Orthodox Church canonizes him as St. Stephen the Great on July 2nd, 1992, exactly 488 years after his death. The celebration takes place at Putna Monastery, where he is buried. 500 years after his death, in 2004, Romania declares a national holiday. Time for fractured Christian kingdoms to regroup. Time for the Ottomans to focus elsewhere, on Venice, on Persia, on internal politics. Time measured in years and lives. When 40,000 Moldavians faced over 100,000 invaders and won decisively. It is not the greatest battle in history. It is not the most famous. But it is the one that reminds you, numbers do not guarantee victory. Superior resources do not guarantee victory. Confidence does not guarantee victory. Terrain, weather, and a commander who knows his ground can turn the tide. Venetian diplomatic records archived in the State Archives of Venice from 1475 and 1476. Polish chronicler Jan Długosz's contemporary account. Ottoman silence in their own records, the absence speaking louder than any admission. Historian Alexander Mikaberidze's assessment that Vaslui was arguably one of the biggest European victories over the Ottomans. Byzantine historian George Francis's conclusion that Mehmed suffered more defeats than victories in the Moldavian campaigns. Pope Sixtus IV's recognition of Stephen as Athleta Christi recorded in papal documents. The commemorative inscription at Voronezh Monastery dated 1488. The spectroscopic analysis of Voronezh blue published in conservation journals from the 21st century. The painted monasteries of Bukovina, inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1993. A winter battle, a crushing defeat for the Ottomans, a temporary reprieve for Eastern Europe. And when it was over, the survivors limped back across the Balkans with a lesson carved into their memory. Some places are not worth conquering, some princes are not worth underestimating, and some winters kill more than cold ever could. He spent 47 years defending a principality caught between empires. Hungary wanted Moldavia as a vassal. Poland wanted Moldavia as a buffer. The Ottomans wanted Moldavia as a doorway. Stephen wanted Moldavia free. He could make every mile of Moldavian soil cost blood and time and morale. He could turn winter into an ally. He could turn marshes into fortresses. He could force an empire to choose between pressing forward into annihilation or retreating in shame. At Vaslui, the Ottomans chose retreat. That choice echoed for years. But Moldavia remained unconquered. Stephen outlived him. He outlived Mehmed's successor, Bayezid II, in spirit, if not in years. And when Stephen finally died, his principality survived as an autonomous entity for another century, paying tribute, but not annexed, bowing, but not broken. They besieged Vienna twice in later centuries. They dominated the Balkans for 400 years. Vaslui did not stop that. The question historians ask is whether Vaslui delayed the inevitable. And the answer, documented across multiple sources, is yes. Poland faced encirclement from the south and east. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth faced pressure it was not yet ready to resist. The balance shifts. Not dramatically, not definitively, but enough to matter. Enough to change the timeline of who fights whom and when. 2 internal succession crises after Mehmed's death in 1481. The northern frontier became a problem, not a priority. A place where campaigns went to die in the cold. We survived another war. Paint the walls. Paint them so bright the color lasts 5 centuries. Paint them so future generations. Remember that defiance is not futile. Paint them so the invaders know we will never forget. We know what you represent, and we judge you, not just on the battlefield, in the eyes of God. He never had the resources of the Ottoman Empire. He never had reliable allies. Every campaign he fought with whatever he could scrape together: peasant conscripts, mercenaries, handfuls of foreign troops sent by kings who wanted credit without commitment. And with that, he held a frontier for 47 years. The psychological warfare with the buglers, the exploitation of weather, these are important. But the deeper lesson is strategic patience. Stephen did not try to invade the Ottoman Empire. He knew he could not win that war. He tried to make the Ottoman Empire regret invading him. And at Vaslui, he succeeded beyond all expectation. In an era when battles rarely produced such losses, this was catastrophic. Entire units wiped out, commanders captured or killed, standards taken, weapons abandoned, and the psychological impact: the unbeatable Janissaries beaten, the elite Sipahis scattered, the carefully assembled invasion force shattered in a frozen valley by an army they outnumbered 3-1. Respect comes from recognizing a worthy opponent. Fear comes from losing more than you can afford. The 1476 campaign under Mehmed himself showed that fear. Mehmed did not delegate. He led personally. He brought overwhelming force, and he still could not hold Moldavia. He won a tactical victory at Valea Alba. He retreated anyway. Because winning a battle is not the same as winning a war. And winning a war in Moldavia required conquering a land that refused to stay conquered. It pays tribute. It sends gifts. It acknowledges Ottoman suzerainty. But it keeps its autonomy. It keeps its prince. It keeps its identity. That compromise lasts until 1512. That is 37 years after Vaslui. 37 years that Stephen's victory bought. The Ottomans install client rulers. The Ottomans demand tribute. But they do not garrison the land. They do not settle Turkish colonists. They do not erase Moldavian identity, because Moldavia proved too costly to digest. The memory of Vaslui lingers. The memory of frozen valleys and scorched earth and ambushes from tree lines. The memory of armies marching in and not marching out. And that memory, painted on monastery walls in Voronezh blue, tells you everything. The color that should not last, lasts. The frescoes that should fade after 500 winters do not fade. The people who should have been erased endure. Not because they were stronger, not because they were luckier, because they refused. Because on January 10th, 1475, 40,000 defenders stood in a frozen valley and said no. Because that no, backed by scorched earth and tactical genius and desperate courage, cost the Ottomans so much blood that the empire hesitated. And in that hesitation, Moldavia survived. Eastern Europe survived. The timeline shifted. And in the valley where it happened, the ground still tells the story. Mass graves that archaeologists find and catalog, weapon fragments that metal detectorists recover, bone fragments that genetic analysis confirms as late 15th century. The physical evidence matches the written sources. The convergence is undeniable. A small principality humiliated an empire, and the world took notice. Not enough to help, but enough to remember, enough to write it down, enough to pass the story forward. Until now, until you hear it, until you understand that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones that buy time. And sometimes time is all you need.